I did this? It's a little silly, but I think it'll help give you the idea. So there's our first abstraction. What about this one? Let's do this. X is, and I'm going to just make up a term. X is beeper than Y. Y is beeper than Z. Well, what does beeper mean? I don't know. All I'm going to say is that it's consistent. Whatever beeper means here, it has to mean down here. Just like whatever Y means here has to mean it there. Well, then you'd clearly be able to see now, I hope, that, well, it would follow that if X is beeper than Y and Y is beeper than Z, then X is beeper than Z. All right. So what we've got then is we've got from a very concrete argument, right, full of all this concrete detail, to a very abstract one. And this again is valid. But the form of the argument, if you look at it, there's no way to change this unless you did an inconsistent substitutions. And maybe, you substituted Joe for Joe, you put X, and then maybe where Joe appears here, you put Q or something. Can't do that. As long as you have a consistent substitution, right? If we go here with the form, as long as you consistently substitute any content you want, it will remain valid. So that's why we sometimes say that a valid argument is valid in virtue of its form, not its content, because this one, if you notice, really has no content, just form. So that's all we're talking about really when we're looking at validity. You don't really worry about content. You're worrying about the underlying form of the argument. This is going to be extremely important because if you don't understand how validity works, if you're not getting a good grasp on the distinction between an argument with content and an argument without one, like just a structure, just an organized structure without content, you're going to have trouble with a lot of these things. Also, it's key to understanding the nature of propaganda. We'll look at that in a little more detail. But right now, the key thing is to understand what we mean by a valid argument. And again, it doesn't matter whether or not in the world, whether or not these things are true or not. Right? We're not talking about that. Validity, another way to think of it, only worries about the connection between the premises. And the connection between the premises is such that if you have these premises and if you say that they are true, then this sentence here, your conclusion, that must be true. So all we're worried about, like when we're talking about X and Y's and beeper and all that stuff, we're not worried about content. We're worried about the connection between all the terms, all the language, all the premises, and the conclusion. So we're just worrying about, once again, no content. We're just worrying about the form here. That's why it's a very abstract concept, and it takes a while to get your head around. So once again, as I've said, have a look at the book, go to chapter 1, read. There's lots of examples. The internet is loaded with all kinds of exercises on understanding validity. So it's really crucial at the beginning of the course that you get a good handle on what arguments are and what we mean by validity. Now you might be wondering, all this talk is pretty abstract. Why would we move from this over to here? Aren't we worried about arguments, as I said earlier, that have sentences that say something about the world? Yes. Logic ultimately is an instrument. It's a tool that we use to talk about the world. But it's a good thing to have a clear understanding of how logic works, because if you don't, it's easy to go astray, to go awry in your writing and in your reading and misunderstand, or completely, to be completely honest, it's people that don't understand logic that well can easily be tricked. And I'm going to show you how that works, especially with propaganda. If you don't understand the distinction between validity and the next concept I'm going to talk about, soundness, you can easily be tricked by someone who's trying to get you to believe something that's not, in fact, true. But it just looks pretty good. So stay tuned for that.